Submittals in BIM360 are documents that are created for consumption by other companies. Submittals are broken into two different groupings. First of all, we have items. These consist of a document or a group of documents. Then we can have a package. A package consists of a group of items. Packages are not required to go through a review process, and packages can be used to break up items that require revisions. For example, you could make items for an electrical and mechanical systems. Once the related documents are in each of the packages, these can be sent for review. This allows one of the items to be accepted while the other may need a revision. Project administrators manage and coordinate the responses to submittals in their project team. Project administrators also define the submittal manager and responsible contractors for their project. The image shown on screen identifies how the submittal workflow will work within BIM360. First of all, we will create an item, add attachments, and then submit it to the manager. These items are then reviewed, they can be assigned to packages if necessary, and then they are both submitted to the reviewers. The reviewer can then add additional co-reviewers. It goes through a review process, and then an official response is added. Once the response is added, it's then returned to the manager. The manager can then review the response, view it as a record, or add a revision as required. It's important to note the optional step is creating packages. This is not always needed when submitting items for review. Before we start using submittals, we must first assign the submittal manager. To do this, simply select the module selector, then choose Project Admin. Then go to Services, and within Services, we're going to select the Project Administration. Here select Project Management, and we can now access the Submittal tab. Under Submittals, we need to identify the Submittal Manager. This manager will have sole permissions to submit the packages for review and close them. In this example, I'm going to assign the module leader as the Submittal Manager. Selecting the drop-down, we can then scroll down and choose a member, a role, or a company. In this instance, I'm going to select ML for module leader and select add. We've now successfully added the module leader as the submittal manager. We can now begin the process of creating the items required for a submittal. Selecting the module selector again, we can now go to project management. Within project management, we can now select the submittals tab. In the Submittals tab, it's split into three items: items, packages, and spec sections. First of all, we're going to create some spec sections. Within the Spec Sections tab, we can now select the Create New Spec Section button. To create a new spec section, we must first of all create a spec number and a spec title. In this example, I'm going to base all my spec sections on the uni format. Within spec section number, I'm simply going to type my spec section in relation to interior partitions. Then within the spec title, I'm going to add interior partitions. I can now select the Create button to complete creating that spec section. We can now go in and add several other spec sections as required. Now that we have added the required spec sections, we can now begin the process of creating the individual items for the submittals. The individual project members can now create items and packages. Acting as the teaching assistant, I can now create a new item. Selecting the Create New Item button, I can now create the new item. Under the general information, I can select previously created spec sections to link to this new item. Selecting the drop down, I can now choose the previously created item. Here I'm going to choose interior doors. At this point, I can also add in a sub-spec section if required. Under the title, I'm going to add in the title for this new item. Once we've added the title, we can now add a description. Under the type drop-down, we can now choose the type of item we are creating. Here I'm going to select this as product data, and now I'm going to assign it to my submittal manager. Selecting the drop-down, we can now choose our module leader. Under the attachments field, I can either drag and drop an item or choose the browse button. Selecting browse, I'm going to add in the specification document that's part of my data set. Selecting open to add this document to my item. Once we've added all the information required, we can now choose the Create button. Selecting Create will now create the item and add it to the list under Submittals. We can repeat this process to create all the other items required for the submittals. As the Submittal Manager, I also have the ability to create new packages. Packages will be used to group the items which have previously been created. Selecting the Packages tab, I can now select the Create New Package. Within here, I can link this back to a sub-spec section. Selecting the drop-down, I can now choose Interior Doors. Within the title, I can add a title regarding this package. Once we've added the title, we can now select Create. Once the package has been created, we can now add the individual items. Selecting the Add Items button, we can now choose the individual items that are now part of this package. Here we can add the items to the package. We can choose the radio buttons by selecting the options and the items that we require to be included within this package. Selecting Done, these will then add these items into the package. Back on the Items tab, you will now see under the Package column what items have been added to which package. Once we have set up all the items and packages, we can now begin the process of submitting these for approval and review.